indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have minutes to approve from the November 18th meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I
Second.
have a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Of those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. First order of business is case number 2312MS, and I give it to staff to make a presentation.
Thank you, fill-in Chairman Burns and members of the board. Thank you for your time this evening. We will be looking at a mountainside case located in the Carefree Foothills subdivision, specifically Lot 38 at 6222 East Via Cassandra Way. The applicant is architect Mr. Victor City, and the owners are Mr. and Mrs. Ed and Rosalie Gordon. This parcel may look somewhat familiar to you. I think we've been chatting ahead of the meeting that we've seen, I think probably all of the lots in this area are now spoken for. This one is an interesting one, but as you can see, while it appears to be surrounded by vacant parcels, they won't be vacant for long. That it is a flag lot, and it is a larger lot that you might typically see in this subdivision. With that said, when we talk about flag lots in Carefree, when we establish the setbacks, we establish them, with the flag lot, not the pole part, but the flag part, where the front, which is still parallel to or fronting on the right-of-way, that's where our front yard setback is, and then you can see the corresponding rear and side yard setbacks. This was also interesting. There was an easement that was granted, my guess, by the adjacent parcel. Sometimes on paper it made sense, but when you actually get into the field and develop, sometimes you need a little bit more wiggle room to actually put things in, develop things such as a driveway, particularly on a very steep lot such as this. This is also a plat that we've seen in other parts of Carefree that has a defined building envelope, and most important to the town is that the building envelope falls and meets our development criteria, which it does. You'll also see on this property, there's some rock outcroppings on the far east side, but for the most part, this lot is made up of steep slopes. And that's really evident in the slope analysis. I think this is one I haven't seen in a long time, that the majority of the lot is in essence slopes greater than 20%, and I would even go as far as saying, 3/4 of the lot is in slopes that are greater than 30%, so quite challenging for sure. Just to look at landscaping and site plan in general, you can see that the driveway does stem off of the existing driveway that is a shared entrance route to the adjacent parcel. So quite a long driveway, but as the report stated, these driveways are reviewed and approved by Rural Metro. And then you can also see that the development is quite tight to the building envelope itself. Not a lot of area that needed to be revegetated outside the buildable area, probably I would say due to the need for retaining walls, which are part of our zoning requirements. So looking at the development standards under review for this rural 70 lot, the maximum lot coverage is 13%, 5.3 in this case, which isn't anything under a solid roof. Disturbed area is 20%, a little more than 20%, with the allowed up to 39%, and that does include the existing driveway, or the proposed driveway, excuse me. As I mentioned, setbacks do comply, both 30 on the sides and 60 front and rear. As I mentioned, it complies both with our zoning requirements as a layout as of a flag lot. Cumulative height is an important criteria that we evaluate with mountainside parcels. In this case, this is 34 feet 2 inches compliant, but we haven't seen some that have been coming closer to 40 feet, and that's what you will see more evident on a lot that's a steep lot such as this one. The maximum building height is 17 feet from its finished floor, and it doesn't exceed 24 feet anywhere above natural grade. The town's grading and drainage requirements have been met. In particular, the cut-to-fill ratio under the building pad, that requirement has been met. Utilities do include Carefree Water Service as well as Liberty Utility for wastewater or for sewer service. This just demonstrates, as you know, how we measure cumulative height. from the lowest built structure on the property to the highest point of the roof line of the proposed structure. Under your specific purview, and as you saw as part of this request, are wall height waivers, which we do often see for these types of mountainside developments, typically for lots that have slopes that exceed 20%. As you saw, I think almost the entire property exceeds 20%. There are also environmentally sensitive features, and again, those slopes are considered environmentally sensitive features. There's also the rock formations that I had mentioned, and the development is away from those particular features. The style of architecture is Southwest modern, which is something that we see quite a bit today when we see either these mountainside properties, or I can tell you even building permits, new single families in general. And they will be utilizing native landscaping and for revegetation, and as I showed you, in a pretty tight development envelope. The reason bringing up the Development Review Board purview is that we will look at the wall height waivers that are being requested. And what this diagram shows is you can see the grading plan. The red highlights the walls that are being requested for relief because they exceed 7 feet. And as we've talked about before, oftentimes it's beneficial to allow for a wall height waiver, meaning walls that exceed the 7 feet, in the sense that otherwise our zoning ordinance requires those walls to typically be terraced if it exceeds 7 feet. Terracing, while at times is recommended and beneficial in terms of resolving how the grading works on a property, but also sometimes to minimize the amount of disturbance, having one taller wall, particularly if there aren't as many vantage points to be seen from a public viewpoint. That tends to be another approach that, again, helps to sensitively integrate the house into the environment, into the lot itself. So you can see that on the the east side of the home, in particular, there is a need for wall height waivers. That's where you see the greatest wall height of 11 feet 2 inches. And then you can see on the south side at the end of the driveway, there is a need for, again, taller walls to allow for sort of a level area into the drive court. I also highlighted on this plan the drainage aspects. The blue dash line shows that oftentimes with these steep slopes where you do have a level area, you need to capture stormwater. And sometimes the best way is to capture it through an inlet and send it out and around to to outflow at the property. In this case, there's one drain at the AC or mechanical equipment units that go, and that I'm talking about on the east side of the property, where the drainage comes around to the driveway or the drive court. And then there's another one for a patio space that there's a drain that actually goes below the home and then daylights on the west side of the home. And I should mention that all of the walls and the drainage has been reviewed and approved by the town engineer. There are some various renderings of vantage points of what you will see from the road or from different aspects of neighbors and neighboring properties. As you can see, there's kind of an integration of stucco, very colored stucco, and stone material. And as part of our public process, we did receive a citizen participation response. The architect spoke, and it seemed that the caller had just some questions about the architecture. So in general, we look for an approval for this particular project, including the attached, as you see, the conditions attached to the report. There are a couple of corrections in the conditions, one being the maximum wall height relief that the applicant is looking for is 11 feet 3 inches. I wrote 9 feet 10 inches. Also, that there is no septic system. So when we talk about the re-veg condition, whether it's there or not, there's no septic. So there's no reason to worry that it will be re-vegged, but you can take that out of if you choose to approve based on these conditions. With that said, the applicant is here if you have any questions or if he has any comments to make on the project.
Yeah, I have a comment. Isn't it the west side where they're asking for the higher walls? Is it the west side or east side?
I didn't.
Yeah, I thought it was the west side too.
My
Okay.
apologies. Okay.
Yeah, and so the drainage is on the east side, the higher walls, most of them are on the
Did I
west
say,
side.
I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure we're clear on that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Stacy, and thank you also for being present for our hearing, even though I understand we're the only one today. So, and with the busy holiday season, I know it's something of a sacrifice. After a presentation like that, it's hard to follow with anything additional that might be salient to your, your purview, other than the fact that we also have gone through the process with the HOA and received the general approval. The HOA restrictions are in some ways even more stringent than the towns, and so there are some areas that don't overlap, so but in general, it feels like we're rowing in the right direction with the HOA, and they've given us approval for their second round approval process, the one prior to final. Otherwise, I think the project is intended to fit into the natural environment as much as can be done in our estimation for a slope of that, severity. And it's interesting for such a large lot. We're so constrained by every inch, it seems. So that's a consideration. Otherwise, I'm prepared to answer any questions you might have.
I do have a question or two. One is, did I read in your write-up that you would prefer to see the retaining walls clad all in stone? And I think I read in your project description that you had like 1/3 of the retaining walls clad in stone. Have we resolved this difference?
I think that is being brought to you to resolve that difference.
I'm not talking about the height, I'm talking about.
I understand. Yeah,
Okay.
about how the materials are clad, and I'm trying to think, I mean, can
Yeah,
you
in that
think of a better
upper
image that I could?
right image, I think it probably shows it.
I think
best
there's also,
if
let
it's
me see, I think there was an elevation.
Yeah.
Oh, this elevation probably demonstrates
The
it.
top.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
does my
Yeah.
cursor?
So
Right
the
in here.
question came up, there's that, that lower wall there that we were looking at a couple different ways to make it so it wasn't just a very long and fairly tall building. And so we thought that instead of having either just stucco, which Stacy advised was not going to be a good approach, or all stone, that perhaps we could make a little bit of additional differentiation by doing kind of a maybe 50-50 stone and stucco. I don't know if it's quite 50-50, but the idea was to create some additional decorative detailing there to create that relief.
Where exactly, are those each a separate wall? Am I really looking at 1, 2,
No, and
3,
that's
4?
what's hard about these elevations. I
Yeah.
think, okay,
go
so
back
it
to
is
the other
that portion that Stacy was pointing at, or, do you mind
Do I go
going to
back to the rendering?
that upper right?
I wonder if I can make it, oops,
Oh, I don't know if you can zoom in.
yeah, I don't think I can.
But if you use your binoculars, there is that portion that's kind of furthest down and furthest towards us, that you can see is a combination of stucco and stone. And I think what might happen is from a distance, it might look like it's even two walls, therefore giving the illusion that it has that further staggered feel. So that's kind of where we were going with that, and rather than going all the way with monolithic stone.
And your staff's thought on this topic?
Right, well, typically, especially with wall height waivers or terraced walls, I think when you start to have several, I mean, I'm not talking that we're talking about 4, but when you have more than one, sometimes adding stone to the lower level wall helps it kind of blend more into the environment. I guess I don't have an objection about that particular wall having, not being all clad in stone. But maybe one thing to think about is maybe just the lower half of it be stone, and just so that I know this is hard to see. I know for me, it's a little bit easier to see it here,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
at least if you bring it and wrap it
Sure.
around so that the whole wall doesn't necessarily have to be stone, but that at least, again, it starts to bring down, in my eye at least, and as it's in the landscape itself, I don't feel like even though it's just kind of a small, an end here, it's still trying to sort of diminish the height of stucco altogether, so,
That
if that
could
kind of
be
makes
a
sense to you.
fair resolution, I think, is if we just brought that line all the way across. And,
Right, and then it would add to your illusion. of-
yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well.
I mean, the interesting thing is that it's so far away from any of the right-of-ways. What we're trying to do is just see what it would appear to be
Right.
from, a quarter mile away or so, eighth of a mile, maybe. So that's.
Do we need to make any change to the conditions? to-
Well, yeah, I might add something as part of if you are in agreement to wrap it around,
What
but
do you
not
think?
clad the whole wall,
Okay.
just
Mhm.
maybe just
To wrap
include
it.
as your motion, in your motion, or
Okay.
something to that effect.
The other question I have is for you, Stacy, and I've seen this before, and maybe you've explained it to me before, but I still don't get it, or I
Okay.
forgot. In condition 3, you say, "No wall shall extend more than 6 inches above the top of a retaining wall."
Yep.
Please explain that to me.
Sure. No, Chairman Burrs, no problem. And what is meant by that is that in Carefree, in our zoning ordinance, that if you have a retaining wall, you cannot extend. A lot of times, somebody will have or a proposal show a retaining wall, and they want to extend the wall on top of it, let's say 3 more feet, to allow for fall height. We don't, our ordinance doesn't allow that, because again, it just sort of gives that illusion of just a taller, more elevation of wall.
I don't get it.
No, I don't follow,
But we are
Did you get it?
proposing that.
you are, oh,
You did?
Yeah,
Okay.
but
can
that's
you
okay
explain it
under
to me?
these circumstances.
right. It's really that upper wall of the terrace there, above the wall that we had been talking about.
So basically, you're saying you can go 6 inches, is what we're talking about, as a stepping from one to the other, so it doesn't look like this huge jump.
Yeah.
And
Well-
so, if I'm looking at this correctly, the lower wall, that's the longest one, is about a little over 7 feet. Then it gets into the one that goes higher to 11, or what does it go to, 9 there?
Yeah, I think it depends on what it's relative to, but I think it's the,
Is there a better?
yeah, there may be a better image. I don't want
I
to.
can see it there.
Yeah, that's helpful, actually, where that dashed line is the floor elevation.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a certain amount of distance, I don't quite know what it is, maybe it's 5 feet or so, below that to the next retaining wall.
Right, so actually, I would say in this case, that's something that should not be a part of that condition. So typically, I mean, in a mountainside case, you can ask for sort of that,
Variance
that
over the
relief.
6 inches because
Right.
they're dealing with the slope.
right. But
Yeah.
typically in Carefree in our zoning ordinance, I guess, so what I mean is that a lot of times people extend the height of that retaining wall to allow for what they call, so somebody doesn't fall over the edge, because normally you might have railing there.
Oh.
So, but in this case, since they're HOA and they're in front of you to allow for extending that wall, that really shouldn't be a part of this particular proposal. That was probably related, my apologies, to a previous case that we had looked at.
Oh.
So we can take that out, yeah.
Okay, so this is in a case where retaining walls, like retaining on a deck or something like that,
Correct,
that you can have a railing to keep people, or you can go 6 inches higher.
right,
But I understand you can also put a flower bed in or something there.
correct, yes.
Okay.
Well, you know the tricks, I guess.
Now, well, that's what I did at my house.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
I did flower.
You got it approved, yeah.
No, it didn't have to go hillside.
So I would just scratch that in
Okay.
that
So
condition.
wrap rock and the 6-inch clause.
Yes.
So it's
okay.
3, 4, and 8 that we've modified.
So
Mhm.
it's number 3, 4, and 8.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God, there were only 9, so you're batting 666. Juan
Thank you,
Sato
Peter.
is making $50 million a year for batting a lot lower than that.
That's a good point.
I just like to keep the board on their toes, that's all.
Okay, do we have to have public comment here, or
You can,
any members of the public? I have no slips, no? Any comments? Can you make a motion?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to, any announcements?
There are no announcements this
I
evening.
will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you
Boom.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great seeing you, and hope you have great holidays, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And welcome to Carefree. That's the most important part.
That's right.